Okay, so Coach Josh was having a nightmare, and in this nightmare, he was at state championships at Parkettes. Now, his last event was beam, and he had to get hit a good score. So he stepped up in his pretty Pikachu leotard and saluted the SpongeBob judge. But when he looked up, it was actually SpongeBob. Shaking his head, he focused and mounted onto the beam. Getting through some sequences, he was getting up to his most difficult skill, the Valdez. He focused himself and went for it, and fell. Hitting the ground and saying oopsie poopsies, he got back up, chalked back up, got back on the beam, hit the rest of his routine solid, and dismounted. Now, he was awarded a 9.0, which got him, during the award ceremony, second place. He was awarded a star-shaped medal. Wait, no, it was a heart-shaped medal for second place on beam. And that is the story passed along.
Okay, so Coach Josh had a nightmare, and he was at a competition at the Parkettes, and he was about to compete his last event, which was the beam. He was in his Pikachu leotard, and he saluted to the SpongeBob judge, and then he looked back at the SpongeBob judge, and it turned into actually SpongeBob, and he mounted the beam, and he was doing his beam routine, and he got up to his hardest skill, which was called the Valdez, and he fell. He fell, and then he said oopsie poopsie. He got back up off of the ground, chalked up, and hit the rest of his routine. He finished with a score of 9.0. He later at the awards ceremony earned the second place title and a heart-shaped medal.
So Coach Josh had a nightmare that he was competing at the Parkettes competition, and he was on his first event, which was beam, and he was wearing a Pikachu leotard, and he saluted the SpongeBob judge, and he was about to do one of his hardest skills, and he ended up falling, and he said oopsie poopsie, and then he got back up and he finished the rest of the routine. He saluted the SpongeBob judge, and the judge actually turned into SpongeBob through his routine, and he ended up finishing with a score of 9.0, and he got a heart-shaped medal.
Okay, so Coach Josh was having a nightmare, and he was competing at Parkettes, and he was wearing a Pikachu leotard, competing on his first event, which was beam. So he saluted the SpongeBob judge and was about to do his hardest skill, and then fell off of the beam, and then got back on and finished his routine, then saluted the SpongeBob judge again, which turned into SpongeBob, and scored a 9.0, and then got a heart-shaped medal as his reward.
So Coach Josh had a nightmare, and he was competing at Parkettes, and he was in a Pikachu leotard, getting ready for the first event, which was beam. He was ready to salute SpongeBob judge, and he got up, and he was ready to do his hardest skill, and he fell off, and then he was ready to salute, and he finished the event. He saluted the SpongeBob judge, then the SpongeBob judge turned into SpongeBob, and then he got a heart-shaped medal.
So Coach Josh he had a nightmare that he went to Parkettes, and he was going to compete in his Pikachu leotard, and he was ready to compete his first event, which was Beam. And so he saluted to the SpongeBob judge, and then when he went to do his hardest skill, he fell. And then at the end of his routine, he saluted the SpongeBob judge, and the SpongeBob judge turned into SpongeBob. And then he got a heart-shaped medal.
So Josh had a nightmare. He went to Parkettes in his Pikachu leotard. His first event was Beam, and he saluted the SpongeBob judge. And then when he was on his hardest skill, he fell. Then he saluted the SpongeBob judge, who turned into SpongeBob, and he got a heart-shaped medal.
Josh had a nightmare where he went to Parkettes for a meet and in a Pikachu leotard. His first event was Beam, and he got up and saluted the SpongeBob judge. But on his hardest skill, he fell off, and when he saluted the SpongeBob judge, he turned into SpongeBob.
Josh had a nightmare, and he was at Parkettes for a competition wearing a Pikachu leotard. He went up for a Beam and saluted the SpongeBob judge, and he fell on his hardest skill and saluted the SpongeBob judge, and he turned into SpongeBob.
Josh had a nightmare when he was at a competition in Parkettes, and he went up to Beam and saluted the SpongeBob judge, and when he went up to do his routine, he fell on his hardest skill. Then he saluted the SpongeBob judge after he turned into SpongeBob.